Kakose, which means how are you? My name is John Sam Mavar. I was born in 1880 on the island of Malat in Austria-Hungary, which is current-day Croatia. My family, like many other families on the island, were in the olive growing business, and we were doing very well. However, after 5 or 6 years of consecutive drought, the growing of olives became impossible. So at the age of 16, and with only a 4th grade education, I took a job shoveling coal on a steamship bound for New York City. I made that trip several times and realized that I wanted to become an American citizen. So at the age of 18, I walked into the immigration office. They asked me a few questions and said, sign here, and just like that, I was an American citizen. America was growing at that time at a rapid pace and needed workers almost everywhere, and I was willing to work. So I worked in New York for a few years until I learned about the thriving seafood industry in South Louisiana and South Mississippi. So once again, I took a job on a steamship shoveling coal, this time from New York to New Orleans, Louisiana. And when I arrived in New Orleans, I met many other people that were from the same area of Austria-Hungary in which I was born. I worked in New Orleans for a few years and then moved to Biloxi and took a job as a deckhand on a sailing schooner catching shrimp and oysters. Not long after I moved to Biloxi, I met my future wife, Olivia Skermetta. She was from the island of Brock in Austria-Hungary, not far from where I was born. She had been here for many years with her family, and she worked in the local seafood factories, picking shrimp and shucking oysters alongside of her mother. She had no formal education. When she turned 19 years old, Olivia and I were married. She continued to work in the factories, and I eventually became a boat captain. Between the two of us, we earned approximately $16 per week. And I always knew I could do better for my family if I owned my own sailing schooner. And back then, you could purchase a sailing schooner for approximately $800. However, that was an amount of money that I just did not have. After every trip home, I would talk to my wife and try to convince her about the benefits of owning our own schooner. After about 3 or 4 years, one night she looked at me and she said, okay. And she said, I have $800. She had saved $800 out of our meager earnings, and she had it stashed in different locations around our house. And of course, I didn't know she had that money. I purchased the sailing schooner and continued to sell my products to the local factories until in 1926, my wife and I had 6 children, and we had saved enough money to buy a small piece of property at the foot of Maple Street, where we opened a company called Mavar Shrimp and Oyster Company. We sold canned shrimp and oysters nationally and in small quantities in foreign countries. They were sold under the brand names of Victor C-Sweet, American Beauty, and Bullhead. Neither my wife nor I had ever visited the country in which we were born. So in 1955, when our youngest son Victor had just graduated the Merchant Marine Academy, the 3 of us took a trip, and we went back to the island of Malat, where I still had 3 sisters living, and we went to the island of Brock, where my wife was born. She only had distant relatives. Most of her family had migrated to the United States, to Chile, to New Zealand, and to other countries. We had a wonderful trip. As we were preparing to return home, my wife became extremely ill, and she died in a hospital in the town of Split. Her body was returned here to Biloxi, and she is buried in this tomb with me. Our sons continued to run the family business, and they developed a way to use the small fish that are discarded out of shrimp nets and turn it into a canned cat food that was sold under the brand name of Cozy Kitten. Cozy Kitten was very successful, and a few years later they developed a dry cat food also sold under the same brand name of Cozy Kitten. In 1988, my son sold our company to the H.J. Heinz Corporation. However, the land on which my factory was located between Oak Street and Pine Street was not part of that sale. And today, Harrah's operates a hotel and casino on that property. My wife and I were very proud of all of our children. John Jr. and his wife Antonia, Sam and his wife Lucy, Margaret and her husband Joe, Antonia and her husband Pascal, Nick and his wife Irma, and Victor and his wife Gail. All of our children raised their families here in the city of Biloxi. Their children attended local schools, and all of my descendants are involved in local civic organizations just like I was. I was a member of the Knights of Columbus, the Elks Club. I was a practicing Catholic. I was a member of the American Shrimp Canners Association, and I was a founding member of the Slavonian Benevolent Association. My granddaughter, Olivia Mavar Slyman, was Shrimp Queen in 1953. I was Shrimp King in 1960. And long after I departed this world, my son Victor was Shrimp King in 2011. Thank you all for coming today. Thank you for hearing my family.